Okay, let's get started. Let's start with the roll call. Start that way.
Burford, present.
Beck, present.
Carlson, present.
Lewis, present.
Villanueva, present.
Kerfman, present.
Thoman, here.
Sounds good. Public discussion of anything not on the agenda. Okay. Moving on to certificates of appropriateness, starting with 817 South 7th Avenue, right?
We should actually announce that we would be
Oh,
switching
gotcha,
the
okay.
order of the agenda.
We would be starting with 431 South Summit Street, but we would have to recuse Nikki, which would not give us quorum, but we are waiting for another member currently, so we will do that later. Instead, we'll start with 817 South 7th Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Ann Russett with Neighborhood and Development Services. I actually received an email from the applicant yesterday of this, for this project, and they have withdrawn their application, so there's no action that the commission needs to take tonight.
Okey doke. Then I guess moving on to 314 Church Street.
Sorry.
Why? My house. My house.
I just have to skip through these real quick.
Never seen it.
I have no same in my life.
And I'm just a little too far. Okay, so 314 Church Street is in the North Side Historic District, located at the Star. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be able to navigate with the pointer, so I'm moving it over there. This is the front of the house. This house is basically an asymmetrical Queen Anne. It has a very complicated roof and other details. Basically, it's a hip roof with a gable on hip. It has a wing on each side. We can see in the Sanborn Fire Insurance map here. This is the main form with the wings on each side and a wraparound porch. At some point, it was built in about, well, I don't know for sure. By 1899 already, though, it had a cross gable wing on the back of the house. And I point this out just because part of what we will be looking at is an addition. I don't know when this addition was put on. This house was purchased in about 1968 by one of the sororities who used it as their, I think their national or regional office. And what they did is they filled in this area right here with a two-story addition. And then later in 1992, they added an addition across the back, taking off that open porch that you see in the Sanborn map. So this is looking at it from one side. We see one of the crossing gables, and then this is that rear one that was put on by 1899. The house obviously is clad in synthetic siding right now. We can see the fish scales, though, on the tower, and the tower is one of the, more architecturally interesting things about this house. Another thing that's interesting is that it's actually almost a twin to the house next door, which has been completely altered. The tower's been cut off and stuff like that. The one next door doesn't have quite the same amount of additions, though. Here we are looking at it from the other side. So this part is all historic. And then this is that addition where they filled in two-story on the end. This is looking at it from the back. So this is the historic part of the house. That addition again that was from 1899. This was the one that we don't know the date, probably the late 60s. And then this addition was put on about 1992. This project has two parts. One part is taking these two windows, which are located right behind the stairs in that addition, and raising the sill. And the new owner is turning this into a single-family home again, which it hasn't been for a very long time, at least 60 years or more. And so this will be the kitchen area. And so they will put in a kitchen with a counter, and so raising the sill allows the counter to pass underneath. Another thing that's kind of interesting about this whole situation is the window sizes. Most of the windows on the house tend to be a similar proportion to the upper floor windows. We can go back and look at them if we need to, but these are the only paired windows on the house, and they're also much longer and thinner than the rest of the windows. We didn't have a drawing, so I kind of made a very, very hasty mock-up of basically where that sill might end up and the proportion of those windows. And as you can see, it's more similar to the proportion of the windows above because they're not quite as long and thin anymore. At the time that they put in the application, this is roughly the size of the windows that they wanted to install. And later, through talking to them, I found out that they actually wanted to widen each of those windows. We don't have a mock-up. I didn't have time, but I did do some other drawings that I'll show you in a minute. Here's just the inside view of that pair of windows as they are currently. So they'll just raise the sill up to here. The head will stay in the same place. So typically we just don't modify the size of the opening. We leave it that way. But they are proposing to widen them instead. So I did this in SketchUp this afternoon. Basically we have the long thin window as it is currently. We have a representation of the rest of the historic windows on the house. So this is proportionally what they all look like. Here is what the size of the window would be if we just took this one and raised the sill as originally proposed. And this is what they are currently proposing, is raising the sill and widening the window. Staff originally thought that it made it look a little bit too much like a mid-century type of window. However, this would be up to the commission to decide. You can either decide to approve it just with the raised sill. You could approve it with the raised sill and widening the window, or you could ask for more information to have a drawing that shows what it would look like in the wall. And this is just basically showing that with the existing egress stair, which I don't know if it'll remain or not, that was necessary when it was a business. And that would be up to them whether or not they want to remove it. The window is not visible from the street either because it's back here behind the stair. The other part of the project, at least when I talked to the owner, was adding a skylight because there is a restroom in this space on the second floor and there are no windows. And so part of the project would be to put a skylight here. They did not actually include this as part of the application. It is something that could be staff approvable. I just include it here because it is easy thing to approve with product information, so you could also approve it at the same time. We don't have product information for the skylight at this time. So the guidelines for at least the skylight, they talk about using a metal frame skylight as opposed to something like a vinyl or a PVC type product. It is not recommended to put them on prominent street elevations. This would be on the back. For windows, recommends using wood windows or metal-clad solid wood windows, of course. When they are synthetic material or metal, we like to see the sashes dark because they won't be painted. And then, of course, adding windows that match the type, size, sash width, trim, use of divided lights, and overall appearance of the historic windows. And if a window opening is to be relocated, it should not detract from the overall fenestration pattern. We're not really relocating, we're resizing here. So staff thinks that the changes towards the rear of the house and in a portion that is an addition, as originally proposed, the new windows would match the proportion of the other windows on the house. Raising a sill for a kitchen counter has gained consensus over time, and the commission has approved it repeatedly. Staff recommends approval for the trim and siding in this on this project to actually match the synthetic trim and siding, just because there's not a plan right now to remove all the rest of it, and because that's an addition of an unknown date, maybe the late 60s, it might be that the synthetic siding and trim was put on when that addition happened, so there might not be a historic trim under there. The new proposal would widen the windows and give them a more square proportion. Staff does not recommend approval of this, but again, the commission can approve it. And then staff does recommend approval of the skylight in the rear slope with the condition that product information is submitted and reviewed. This is the recommended motion.
Oh, heavens. Now is commission questions for the staff. I have a question. This is Lewis speaking. The original plan windows versus the new wider windows, which ones match the width of the other windows in the house?
I wrote it all down here.
You're good.
Okay, the windows on the house, not the ones we're altering, but all the rest of the historic windows, are 30 by 64.
Okay.
And the two windows that will be altered, they're actually only 24 inches wide. They're narrower, but they're 70 inches tall. So the proposal would keep a 24-inch window, but it would be reduced to 48 inches high.
Right.
That is twice the width. The historic windows are 30 by 64, so just slightly over twice the width. What they want to put in instead is a 30 by 48. So it's like 1.5 times the width for the height.
But sorry, Villanueva speaking. But what the applicants are proposing would match the width of their other windows.
It would.
Okay.
Sorry, not the original ones, but the newer ones. When I say newer, I mean the ones that we're talking about now. The ones all far to the right
So-
in the picture.
The historic windows are all 30 inches wide.
Great.
The two windows we're altering are 24.
Okay.
So originally, they were just going to keep them 24.
Right.
But now they want to make them 30 inches wide.
To arguably match the rest of the windows in the house.
It could be said.
Okay.
I'm just going to jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Carl Brown just joined the meeting for the minute taker.
Villanueva, you said that the 30 by 48 windows, two of them would look mid-century. Why is that?
They did tend to use a more horizontal-looking window. The more you got into the 20th century, Victorian windows tend to be very long and thin, at least twice as tall as they are wide. And later in the middle of the century, the emphasis went on the horizontal with, one-story things. And so when you tend to see a double-hung window in a house anywhere from the 40s on, it tends to be more square instead of being more vertically rectangular. That's why I said it would tend to be a little bit more mid-century. But it is a fact that they would match the width of the historic windows on the house.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okey doke. Do we have commentary from the owners, is my question now?
Yeah. So Bethany, if you want to speak, you'd come and sign in.
I'm saying this confidently.
Yeah, thank you. Looking at it, it did look to me more similar to the windows above, to have the somewhat wider windows, and obviously it would create more interior window space. I was talking to my contractor and asked if there's any way we could have a window that's a bit taller than 48 inches. And he said they could possibly add about 6 inches, and I was looking at what are standard size for windows, and I think it could go 52 is a pretty standard height, or something like that. Might be 54. So I don't know if that would make any difference.
And so would you then lower the sill just a little bit? We wouldn't want you to raise the head height, because typically that's going to be similar to the head height of the other windows around. We'd have to look at that, because the head height, we do want to make sure matches other windows where the top is.
But there are no other windows visible from there. Like there, where you see that window, you don't see any other first floor windows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I'm not planning to remove the staircase. It's nice to have that second staircase.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, without that being part of the proposal, I don't know what to do with that. But, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone want to make a motion? Does anyone want to make a motion? Someone make a motion.
Beck moves to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 314 Church Street as presented in the staff report with the following conditions. The new windows remain 24 inches wide. The new windows are 2 individual windows installed with framing and trim between them, and skylight product information is submitted for staff review.
Villanueva, second.
Commission discussion. This is Lewis speaking. I think if we're matching, like if you go wider and we're matching the width of the rest of the windows on the house, that to me makes sense. Just to kind of have them match more. I think having them thin and long right now looks very out of place, but again, it's on a part of the house that you can't see too much. So I think shortening them and widening them a little bit to me makes sense. So if we got rid of that first bullet point, I'd be in favor of that, I think.
To be honest, I feel that, yes, no one will see this window, and I do feel the same way about the width, and so I'd be willing to amend my motion if that's what the committee wants.
Burford assumed that the purpose of using the wider window would be just to admit more light and just a functional purpose. So I'd be amenable to the larger size width.
Villanueva, I also agree. I'm completely fine with the 30-inch width of it, also because it matches the rest of the windows and you can't see it from the street.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. I'm gonna have us take a vote. All in favor?
So-
Oh, sorry. Wait. Sorry.
And
Yes, you're right.
amend my motion to approve a certificate of appropriateness by removing the first bullet point
Sure.
of the previous motion.
Do we need a second?
Villanueva, second.
Okay. Thank you for all yelling at me.
Yeah, maybe you should just say that they can be 30 inches instead.
Okay. I amend my motion of approval to specify that the new windows may be 30 inches wide.
Villanueva, second.
Okay. Okay, now I'm gonna do it. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Awesome. Moving on, I think we have Carl now, so we can do 431 South Summit Street. If we do that, Nikki has to skedaddle.
To say anything? No, I can just.
You're supposed to say, why and that you are.
Oh, sorry.
So Villanueva recuses herself for the 431 South Summit Street as she lives there and owns the house.
Carl, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. I had asked, am I a big face up on the screen if I have my video on, or do you not see my video at all?
We cannot really hardly hear you at all, so the slower and louder you can speak, the better.
One moment. Okay, I'll try this again. Can you hear me now better?
A little bit.
No, now, can you hear me better?
It's not great, but
It'll do.
we'll make it work.
Okay, wonderful. The only question I had asked was if I am a large face on a screen on video, or do you not see me?
Oh, you don't need to show your video. That's okay. Or you can, your preference.
But we can't see you.
Yeah, we can't see you.
Yeah. And I still can't actually understand him, so FYI.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
We'll pop our ears or something.
Yep, I don't know why.
Okay, so 431 South Summit Street is in the Summit Street Historic District. It is located here. I'm going to show you a little bit about this house's history because it relates to the drawings a little bit and it has changed dramatically. As you can see, this is a photo from Google in 2022, what it looks like right now. The owners actually have photos from before. It was built in 1878 or so as an Italianate. Basically, it's a cross gable house. It has a front-facing gable and then another side-facing gable in the back. It had a wraparound porch. It had all of the Italianate details. Single columns. Note the fact that it was, raised up off of grade and the approach came directly from the street. There was probably some slope here. The existing window trim is still there. There was a fire at this house, but I think that they just repaired it. But then in 1930s, the local architect, J. Bradley Rust, worked on the house and he remodeled it. I think that he probably put on the rear addition at this time. And then by 1935, he had started basically what I think is like replacing the Italianate with a colonial revival. The door has changed to a very colonial revival surround, and they've added shutters. They've removed the porch. They've changed the grade so that there's no longer the need for a porch raised up off the grade and steps. We just come directly up with steps on the side, which is the existing condition. The remodeling continued, and then by 1944, the roof had been replaced with a hip roof, and the same with the what was a crossing gable is now a hipped roof on the wing. At some point in time, this partial porch was put on, and we've been searching through town to see what other houses happen to have this very plain scalloped trim, and we have found it on some 1940s houses, so it was probably just popular at the time. I find it actually very interesting that the columns are similar to what an Italianate house might have, only they're double here, which the house, when it was Italianate, had single. It's just very fascinating, actually, to me. But it does relate to some of what is going on. This is the rear of the house. So this is the wing that I do believe that it was probably put on in the 30s, and it was part of that colonial revival. The trim is simplified. There's kind of a bracketed hood on the Italianate portion of the house for the trim. As we can also see, this house has synthetic siding as well. The current project is to remove this modern deck and this modern door. We can see it's much shorter than the rest of the windows on this floor. And actually remove the cellar access that'll go inside. And they are going to put on a rear porch that's just a partial width porch to provide access through the kitchen, which they're remodeling. The window that is located here will come out, and the door, it won't fit exactly there. It'll be moved over just a little bit. This is just another shot of the door that's a little too short in the deck that they will be removing. Note that it has kind of a wrought iron railing. Here's another shot. And then this is the back of the house. If you'll notice, there's a little bit more space here than here. I think in order to facilitate the remodel of the kitchen, they're actually going to put the new door so that it aligns kind of over here. It'll balance a little better with the window patterning on this portion of the house that way. Here's the drawing. There are some things in the drawing that are a little bit inconsistent with the project, and so I will point those out, and if approved, we'll just note that in the drawings. For instance, they talk about the new porch roof matching the front porch roof. And I'll show it a little bit that that's definitely not what we want to do. The front porch roof is failing. It is no slope. It's probably a negative slope. Really, it's very, very low. And it just doesn't have like a colonial revival eave condition or any of the things that we would want to see. Instead, we would mark up the drawings to match the roofs over the projecting bays instead. So anyway, this does show the door. You can kind of see that outline of the existing window along here. Also note that right now they show the stairs as just a narrow set of stairs. We kind of had this conversation a little bit with a house in the Longfellow neighborhood, where typically if we have a porch, the stairs are going to span from column to column. This is just a small partial width porch. In order to terminate that railing, otherwise we would normally look for having a short column with a pier below it. And so part of the staff recommendation here is actually to just have the stairs be full width of the porch. That way we don't have to replicate too many piers in such a small space. Here's another image. It is drawn so that the new rear porch aligns with the bay and the front porch, but that does not work with reality. So that's what we'll mark up here with it matching the existing bays. Also note the railing as drawn here on the front porch. That's somewhat similar to what's existing. So the drawings currently say the new porch railing will match existing. We would not be matching this, and then the deck that's being removed had a wrought iron railing, which we actually is disallowed in the guidelines. So we would just mark this up that they would match the guidelines instead, which would be easy. This is just showing you the bays. It works pretty well with the siding. They align with just the lap one step below the sills, so they would be up here, and this is where this porch roof connects. I do think the eave's a little higher too, even though it almost aligns here. This porch is just hiding the window heads. If this porch was rebuilt, it would probably be rebuilt up in this location to match the bays as well, which would give them more slope and solve their drainage problem too. But that's just to show you that we would be matching these bays instead. So for the guidelines, we have about the balustrade and handrails with the spindles, the top and foot rail, We have, with the doors, the fact that they could be wood, or we approve fiberglass as well. I only included this last line just because we are taking out a modern door that, while it was new when it was installed, technically that's blocking down an opening to fit a standard size door, which we don't approve. We want it to match the other door heights. For porches, using a vertical grain Douglas fir is recommended. The drawings did say they would match the front porch. It has a concrete floor, and that's not what is being proposed. Staff would recommend that this is at least a tongue and groove floor, maybe a little flexibility if the commission wanted to, because it's on the rear of the property, but typically we would still want that to be some type of wood. There's also not skirting shown, but there's no dimension. Our guidelines would want skirting under it if the space is 18 inches tall or greater. I don't know exactly how tall that one is. And then it says that in the siding section that matching synthetic siding may be used to repair damage. I think in this case, just because of the fact, again, there's not a plan to remove this siding currently, and we are just patching the location of the door, and it's just a smooth metal siding, so they could potentially find a replacement to just patch that. Staff would recommend allowing them to just do that. All of the trim on this house is wood, and it's exposed, so they could match the trim. In the window section, it does talk about if an opening is to be relocated, it should not detract from the overall fenestration pattern. It's not a window, but it's an opening, it's a door, and we are removing the undersized door, and by actually shifting over the location from where that existing window is, I think that they're fitting the window pattern in pretty well because they're kind of moving away from the corner of the house. For additions, we talk about matching keys horizontal lines, putting them at the rear, constructing a foundation that appears similar to the existing. This house has a stone foundation that's mostly parge coated that I can tell in photos. So I think that the piers for this porch, which are the foundation, could either be a smooth concrete or they could be parge coated or anything like that. Would probably match well enough. Constructing roof overhangs and soffits to match. Again, we'd match that bay. And then there are some others. There's an exception for foundations. That they can just appear similar or match the color. Another important thing for this particular property is the fact that in Summit Street, we do have a limitation on how far into the rear of the property the primary structure or house can extend, and that's limited to 125 feet. And that's in order to preserve the rear yards. A lot of these houses are pushed back pretty far, and so we just don't want them to extend so far that they have no rear yard. The owner knew of the fact that this house actually extends just a little bit further than that, potentially. I don't know exactly where the pins are, but they came to the commission to determine whether or not they would be able to do an addition in the future, and that was back in, I believe, September of 2023, and the commission was definitely open to allowing them to put an addition on this house. Their idea of an addition kind of changed from an enclosed addition to a porch, but it is still an addition, and so we would approve that through an exception to the guidelines. And then, of course, demolition talks about removing non-historic features as a good thing, which we're doing here. I think I've gone through this. I think we're still looking at the door product just because they've submitted a 2-panel door with a half light, but I'm a little unsure of what the material is exactly. So we'll get that worked out. But Otherwise, I think with the notations we'd put in the drawing about the railing, the floor, the roof, the only other thing is the fact that staff would recommend that the stairs are full width of the porch. And so this is the recommended motion.
Thank you. Do we have questions for staff? Okay.
Carl, can you hear me better now?
Yeah,
Oh, wonderful. I tried all the different microphones on the computer in here. I was curious when you noted that we had discussed this in September 23 and approved an exception. Do we know what our thinking was on the exception? And I only ask, I'm curious if all the reasons that we would have given for the exception last time around are the same. Like, would they all apply to this exact same situation? In which case, it makes it pretty easy to think about.
I did not go through the minutes, so I don't know that I can necessarily answer that for you. I think that part of the discussion was about the fact that they have a very tiny kitchen and they wanted to be able to expand and work with that. I think that this changing the location of the door will allow them to expand the kitchen in that direction towards the street. And since it's probably going to remain a galley kitchen, having the door at the end in the middle is not going to mess up their space use.
But is the question about the 125 feet rule?
Well, I mean, it's just about, I think Carl was asking if we had, or if the commission had reasons why you were willing to expand beyond the 125 feet.
Sure.
And I don't know if there, unless, do you remember?
Well, okay, this is Beck speaking, by the way. In my memory, I believe the property is immediately adjacent or very close to another property that I think is grandfathered in that violates this rule as well. And I think that was a factor in the thinking.
Yeah, I think Lewis speaking, this was most of the houses on Summit Street actually don't follow that rule. Like it was seemingly created after the fact. So I think that was part of the discussion as well. And if I'm remembering correctly, it was also, is it all the way to the end or is there it's like 6 feet to work with or something like that as opposed to whatever? So it was like the addition was going way beyond that as opposed to just closer to that. So I think if it was like closer to that, it was more of a willing to just kind of get there. Again, I don't know exactly, but that was kind of my memory of that as well.
Okay. Thanks. That's all helpful.
Okay. Any other questions from commission for staff? Okie doke. Owners talking if you want. Don't forget to sign in.
Don't really necessarily have anything to say. I guess we just want to make myself available to any questions anybody in the commission might have. As you can see, this has been a project over 3 years in the making. And so we're open and willing to work with the commission as much as necessary. And so I think Jessica's been pretty thorough and made sure she's done a good job at addressing all the questions. And so if anybody else has any remaining questions, we're more than willing to kind of talk at length about the plethora of things that have kind of popped up as we've tried to get this kitchen remodel taken care of. So with that being said, anything I can address for anyone?
Burford, just curious, those Dorothy doors that go down to the cellar.
Yep.
That will be a vacant space. You would have to fill that in?
So the current thought is to essentially just create a concrete ceiling for that. We could maybe even just turn it into like a storm area, but that way we could build the porch over that and try to minimize the amount of rework we have to do with the foundation, with a lot of the other existing structures, which has kind of been one of the themes we've one of the things we've tried to really avoid is how do we do as much as we can without touching as many things as possible, and addressing the issues that need to be addressed. But yeah, great question.
All right, I don't have any questions.
Carlson speaking. Are you open to putting the stairs all the way across the back porch?
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah. We tried to have an open mind in terms of what we needed to do to approach this. Obviously, consistency as the house has changed over the centuries at this point have made it kind of unclear to us. So we have a pretty open mind. We just want to make it consistent with whatever the house needs to be.
Great.
Moving forward.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Foman moves to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 431 South Summit Street through an exception to the guidelines for uncommon situations and with the following conditions. The floor is tongue and groove, the piers and balustrade comply with the guidelines, the porch roof matches the bays, not the front porch roof, and the steps are full width.
Beck seconds.
Okay, commission discussion?
I think this is an improvement. Just seeing what is on the side of the house now and how stylistically that isn't working. It's a lot of modern components there. I like the idea of tucking this entrance behind the house.
Okey-doke. Okay. I'm gonna start the vote then, unless, okay, we're good? I was like, do I need to do anything else? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Cool. Did we get Carl's vote? I didn't hear it.
Carl, did you vote?
I said aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
I did say it, but I was in favor, yes.
I just wanted to make sure we had you. Okay.
So we can get Nicole again.
Yes, we can summon Nikki back.
The child rejoices.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to a report on certificates issued by the chair and staff, starting with minor review with 824 North Gilbert Street.
Sorry, I have to get there again.
You're okay.
Oops. We just had one minor review, and that this 824 North Gilbert Street is located in the Brown Street Historic District here, and it's just a roof shingle replacement. We also had one intermediate review, the property we've been working on over the past year. 205 North Lynn Street, a local landmark located in the North Side Marketplace. And this project was signage and awnings, starting for the mercantile that will be in there.
Okay, moving on to commission information. I don't know if
We don't really have any. I didn't have the minutes yet, so just an FYI. That's why we didn't have the minutes. We'll just have 2 sets next time.
Gotcha. Fun. Then to commission discussion with the Oak Grove Park and Mexican Barrio.
Yeah, and so I'll just start by reminding everyone that we do have on our work plan for the commission an interest in helping with the naming and signage, at least that's staff's assumption, for Oak Grove Park when it gets its, rehab soon. And this all started basically because we had received an article written about the Mexican laborers who had lived in the area of the park in the early decades of the 20th century. And at that time, there was an interest in putting up some signage or something like that. Staff talked to the parks director, and we knew that redoing this park would be coming up, and so we've kind of put it into that project. And so with it being on the work plan, we wanted to make some progress. And as we all know, the Highway 6 bridge over the Iowa River, which is considered historic, will be replaced. And to mitigate for the loss of that, the DOT had agreed to do a study of this park area for us. And so they have hired a consultant. It's Ray Werner from Tallgrass Archaeology, and he is here tonight basically to let you know what he's doing with the project, to hear you out and talk to you about what the goals might be, and stuff like that. And so, Ray, I have your slides, and if you just want me to if you want to tell me when to advance, I'll just do that.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
So I'm Ray Werner. I'm a principal investigator with Tallgrass Archaeology. Our primary office is here in town. You may know some of us, or you may have worked with Leah Rogers or Jan Full in the past. I, myself personally, am located in Dubuque, but I'm excited to be here with you today. As Jessica said, we work frequently with the Iowa Department of Transportation, and they have hired us to conduct an intensive level survey of the Oak Grove Park and roughly 12 surrounding properties to look at it for potential eligibility as a National Registered District or any potential individual eligibilities that there might be, and to maybe come up with some other recommendations that might be appropriate for the area. And today I'm going to share with you our process, things that we've done to date in that project, and to hopefully get your feedback and hear about some of your goals or objectives that you might have that might help us as we move along with this project. So let's go to the next slide.
This one?
Yes. So I'm sure many of you know Oak Grove Park. There on the south side of the railroad tracks, you have South Dodge on the east edge of the park, Page Street to the south, and Webster Street on the west edge. And highlighted there in yellow are the properties that we're going to be looking at for potential historic or architectural significances under the 4 criteria of the National Register of Historic Places. And as you may have surmised, this area was once the location of a Mexican barrio with Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific line workers who were hired by them. And we've begun our background research on that. We've had some preliminary communications with the author of the article that was published, was it in 2017?
Yeah, I think
or
so.
Thereabout. And we've been beginning to look at its place and that community's place within Iowa City, and then a broader context of what other Latino or Mexican communities existed in Iowa. Turns out there were several that were also related to railroad labor, and we're looking at them in a comparative fashion, and possibly some others throughout the Midwest as well as across Iowa. But we want to get a better understanding of Iowa City's Mexican barrio and who were those people, what were their histories, what activities or roles did they have in the Iowa City community, and what happened to them after they were sort of disbanded, if that's an appropriate word to use. The community was really heavily focused in this area with some sort of temporary housing that the railroad had built in what is now the park, and potentially in some other nearby houses as well. If they were borders there, we're not quite sure yet. But we're looking at that history, and we've begun building that history, crafting that history as well. We have a draft report that city staff has seen so far. And so these are the properties we're looking at in that context, and maybe some others. Slide. This is just an example of some of the history we've begun compiling for the city of Iowa City, in particular this neighborhood. How did it develop and when? When did the railroad come through? What other activities did the railroad have in the area? Just to get a better idea of this community's place and role within the community. So this background map here with the black shaded rectangles is directly taken from that prior article written on the laborers and their community here. They also brought their families with them to live here. So in the red outline is the study area that we were contracted to work in, given to us by the Iowa DOT. I'm also going to include in the study that other black shaded area pointed to by the blue area, or by the blue arrow, just because it is so close and seems like it likely has a connection to this theme as well. It's cut off here on the projection, but we do have some maps and aerial photographs of the neighborhood that show where their temporary housing was built by the railroad. And we have records of their occupation in these houses from 1909 to about 1936. So that's the window of time.
Hey, Ray. So all of these slides are cut like that. I thought it was a style choice because they came in as a shorter one. So FYI, the other part of that image, it did not exist in what you gave me either.
I think I know the problem. That's my fault. Sorry.
I just wanted to point it out because we won't have that side.
I think we'll make it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. These are just some photographs from local newspapers that we've found in our preliminary research of some of these people here in Iowa City as we start to write their family history. Go ahead. In addition to newspaper research, we're going to be working maybe with some of the local Catholic parishes to see if they had any role in those communities. In Iowa City, we're trying to dig through some Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific archival materials, but they're really scattered. Some are in Oklahoma, some are just in Rock Island, Illinois, but we're doing our best to find as much information as we can from the railroad side to see what historical resources might exist there. We're also doing more local research, which everything or so much is digitized now. It's really easy to do from home or office. These are examples of some chronologies that we've built showing the ownership of the lots where the houses are now. So we're really leaving no stone unturned in our historical research. This shows property ownership and slide. And then U.S. Census data is also very informative for us. We can access a lot of data there about the people who lived in the houses, as well as in the temporary houses that are no longer there, that were in the park. And it's given us a lot of really valuable information about the residents, whether they were part of the Mexican barrio or just other citizens living in the houses. Slide. Mm-hmm. And so from that, we're building a site-specific history on each of the properties, as well as on the park itself. And ultimately, we'll present this information in a way like this that gives a physical description of the property, history of the property, and then a statement of significance that will include a recommendation for potential National Register eligibility, and whether that's on an individual basis as a part of a district or no eligibility at all. And in the end, we will have a package of recommendations that we will present to the DOT and to you and to the State Historic Preservation Office. And you will have an opportunity to provide feedback on the report, provide comments, questions, concerns, everything like that. And in the conclusion, we'll have a package of recommendations, like I said, that will look at things like National Register eligibility, potential recommendation for archaeological study. If there are remnants of privies or outhouses, that would be informative. If there is a district, we could include a site as an eligible contributing resource within the district. So having more archaeological information could ultimately be valuable as well. And then any other recommendations that might be appropriate and or might come from goals and objectives that you as a commission have. And so now I guess I'd like to open it up to you for comment, whether it's about the methodology that I've presented here today or about your hopes and goals for the project overall. Thank you. And I will probably take notes as well, so.
Yeah, I don't know. This is Lewis speaking. It seems cool. I don't know if that's, I want that official and on the record, so that's fine.
Burford, I'm a native Iowa Cityan, and I was not aware of this whole history, so it was a fascinating article to read. And I think it should become part of our awareness of Iowa City and its history.
Mm-hmm. This is Thoman, and it does seem like with the political climate the way it is, this is really a way to humanize the story of people who maybe come to this nation, come to this area in hopes of possibly bettering their lives. So I like that aspect of it. I am curious about the black dots. So those are the existing homes that are around there? No.
In some cases, yes.
Okay.
In some cases, no, they are houses that were demolished around the 1970s, probably, maybe some earlier. But some of them that are houses, we're not quite sure yet if these are places where some of the families relocated to once they were more or less told to leave the shanties that the railroad had built for them. Because you'll see up in the other parts of the city, the families did kind of disperse into other dwellings throughout the community.
I'm excited to read the article. I admit, I was going through the end of my agenda this afternoon and came to the article and thought, oh, I'm looking forward to reading it. But it's interesting to think about, yeah, they were living in some really poor dwellings, it sounds like, and then coming into maybe these homes. I'm excited to see if you learn anything more about the properties that are there today and if there are connections.
Yeah.
So very exciting.
I guess I have one question for just the language being used. Lewis speaking, by the way. Is district being created? I know that we talk about historical and conservation districts. When you say created district, what do you mean by that?
Well, we would be looking at a potential district, not creating or nominating a district. We would just be looking for what could be and whether or not that could be district is or is not eligible. And then maybe someday be listed in the National Register.
Gotcha, I see. Okay.
This is similar to, actually, Kevin brought up, Marla Svensson had done intensive surveys of much of Iowa City in the past. And that's where, her surveys started, and then we had National Register nominations that made districts, and then we had local districts created. Basically, that intensive survey in determining whether or not something is eligible is how they have to work and how the DOT has to work with what it was agreeing to do. And that doesn't mean that we would do a district in our community, partly because for us, it's a district tends to be about the built structures. We don't have local archaeological districts, and the area of the park itself has no structures that remain. Some of those surrounding structures might, but I think that the goal here is for the commission to be able to do what it wants on the work plan through the work that Ray has done. And so, if the goal, along with the park redo, is to rename the park, because right now we all know it's a generic name, Oak Grove Park, it doesn't have anything to do with that park, it's just generic. Or with Parks and Rec putting up informative signage in other parks as well. Maybe there's something that comes out of this that does that. We did have the letter. It was an email actually that came to me about this exact topic just last week or 2 weeks ago, and I included that in the agenda packet for you. And that was basically because there is community interest in this, and so I was happy to be able to let her know that we had this as an agenda item, and so it might be that as this proceeds, you might want more input from the community about, what do we do with this information? That's, I just kind of wanted to throw that
it gives
out
us
there.
information to do with something that we want to do, or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, to what extent does the city solicit the opinions of immediate neighbors as to what they think would
I don't know how their naming process really works. I mean, it goes through the Parks and Rec Commission, I would assume, because when we had another name suggestion, that's where that went. And, it's all public meetings. And so I would assume that, anyone who's interested in park naming gets those agendas and is interested. I don't know if there's, good neighbor meetings. I don't know that for a fact. But we can find that out as we go through the process. And if that's something that you want to do, then maybe you organize yourselves into a volunteer group that has some little event in the park to try to get the neighbors to speak out. There's always that kind of a possibility as well.
Gotcha. Cool.
It'd be interesting to know if there are ancestors of these people still here, or if they maybe were very transient and maybe, I don't know if they moved on with the railroad or if some of them stayed in this location.
As of the 2017 article, I believe there was one family
Okay, so yeah, I need to read.
still here. I know they were interviewed for the article. I don't know off the top of my head where exactly they resided.
I had a suggestion for you a couple of years ago when I was working with SHPO. I read Alexa McDowell's nomination for the Catholic Church in Waukee. That was a Mexican community that were all working in the local coal mines. Much larger community, but I don't know. And actually, a lot of her sources were a local historian, and but there might be some other tie-in there or some other sources.
Yeah, that's a new one to me. I'm happy you mentioned that. We will definitely look into that. West Liberty also had a large Mexican community who were primarily railroad line workers as well. As we've looked into this, we found that at about 1900, the major Mexican railroads and the major United States railroads were able to link up at the border. And it was at that time that the U.S. railroads were able to not necessarily poach, but hire their laborers for half the cost of European immigrant laborers. And so that's how that connection really started, and then they started to move them upwards along the railroad, up from Texas and New Mexico, up through Missouri, into Illinois, and then from there kind of around the rest of the Midwest. And so it was by 1909 that the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific brought them here. So getting those broad stroke histories and those pieces of the puzzle put together to see where our place in all that is interesting, and we'll hopefully have a nice clear picture for you at the end of it.
All good. Okie doke. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
That is the end of our agenda.
Well,
and-
Actually,
No, we're not. Sorry. God, I am doing great.
Is the student?
Please sign in.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, my name is Isobel Perez.
Maybe a little louder.
My name is Isobel Perez, and I was the one who emailed Jessica about the barrio. I'm not sure if you were able to speak with Nate, but the family you're looking for, they live in Des Moines. They're the Cano family, and they wanted me to come and speak to y'all to just say, like, thank you, that this means a lot, that there's just some effort being put into recognizing this history, and that they appreciate anything y'all are willing to do, whether that is renaming the park or putting up like a historic plaque. They were still hoping to put a bench up. I know that they sent something about like a name, like a historical bench program, and the application period is closed.
Oh.
But next year they're hoping to apply. And yeah, I guess like with the research, I would just hope that the Cano family could be included. And with this project, they could be included more because they're still living. So it's less history and more like their life, and they're still here. So yes, they will definitely be reaching out to y'all. They reach out to me constantly. So y'all will be hearing from them. And they're very lovely people.
If you could put them in contact with me, I'd be happy to make a note to try to remember and send them anything that we end up doing in the future, you know, like agendas and all that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be sure to do that. But that was all I had to say. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm going to say we're adjourned now. We're adjourned. Okay, great. We don't have time for
Thank
that.
you, Carl.
Thank you.